You know, I just retired from 15 years with the Army Corps of Engineers. Map guy. Water boundaries. The stuff nobody reads but matters to everyone. And I thought, Barrett, time for a little quiet. A little lake house bliss. So I found this place, Lake Serenity, all 47 acres of pristine water. Cash sale, no inspections, no questions asked. Only cost me something like $850,000. A bargain, honestly. But what I bought was not peace. It was a war. A very soggy, very fluorescent war. The very next morning, at the crack of dawn, I'm standing waist-deep in my crystal-clear water, just enjoying the mist rising off the surface, when this corporate invasion force wades in from the shore. I'm talking 3 HOA board members in matching coral suits, their clipboards already getting waterlogged and leading them. Cutting through the serene morning like a hot pink chainsaw was Veronica Sinclair. Veronica, in a fuchsia blazer that was rapidly darkening as the lake claimed the fabric, points a manicured finger at me and yells, "Sir, you need to evacuate this lake immediately. You are trespassing on Emerald Shores community property and we will have you arrested." I just laughed, a slow, low chuckle that seemed to annoy the great blue heron watching us from the cattails, and I said, "Ma'am, this is my lake. I bought it yesterday." Her laugh cut back, shrill and grating like nails on a chalkboard. "Honey, nobody owns a lake in Emerald Shores. This is community property managed by the HOA for 40 years. You've been scammed." That's the moment I realized Veronica had no idea she was threatening a former federal hydrologist who'd spent his career mapping navigable waters. But more importantly, she didn't know what my grandfather, old Colonel North, had hidden beneath these seemingly tranquil waters back in '88. See, 3 decades ago, my grandfather, Harold Northwick, had been part of a highly classified environmental task force, and right before he passed, he left me a note rambling about promises that don't rust and a few $1,000,000. But the real inheritance was the lake itself, listed separately from the surrounding development. The nervous real estate agent practically shoved the deed into my hands, rushing the cash-only closing. And that's because the deed I held wasn't just a simple property title. It was the entire lakebed, water rights, and all navigable water within its boundary, stamped with the unmistakable signature of federal oversight. As Veronica waded deeper, her fuchsia suit soaking up the cold water like a sponge, dripping with the kind of condescension that makes you want to move to Alaska just to avoid human interaction, I thought about Harold's cryptic warnings. Now, facing an HOA president so confident in her local authority over federal navigable waters, those rambling words suddenly clicked into place. "I don't know what kind of con man sold you this fantasy," she sneered. "But we have the documentation, the legal precedent, and the community support. What you have is a worthless piece of paper." She said veteran like it was a diagnosis, not a service record, while the board treasurer, this perpetually stressed-looking woman named Martha, furiously scribbled on her soggy clipboard. I kept my voice calm, the way they taught us in federal negotiations training, and suggested, "Mrs. Sinclair, I understand your confusion about jurisdiction, but perhaps we should discuss this on dry land where we can review the actual legal documents." She snapped, "There's nothing to discuss. You are trespassing. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling 911 for criminal trespass, harassment, and destruction of community property." The irony was delicious. She was chest deep in the water she claimed to own, threatening the person who actually held the deed. Then I noticed him, an old man, maybe 70, sitting motionless in a battered aluminum fishing boat about 50 yards out. He wasn't fishing. He was watching. As the morning breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle mixed with the disturbed lake sediment the HOA was stirring up, I pulled out my phone. "Ma'am, before anyone calls law enforcement, we need to clarify something about federal water rights." Her laugh was even more piercing this time. "Federal what?" "Honey, this isn't the Pacific Ocean. The federal government has exactly zero interest in our little pond." That's when she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, launching into a truly theatrical performance about a trespasser making threats about federal intervention and fearing for their safety while standing waist-deep in the middle of a lake. It was Oscar-worthy. Just as the sirens started wailing in the distance, cutting through the peaceful morning like a coming storm, the old man in the boat started rowing toward us. His movements were efficient, practiced, a lot like my grandfather's. "Quite a show," he called out, his keel scraping the sand. "Been watching this lake for 35 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this." Veronica spun around, water sloshing. "Excuse me, sir. This is a private community matter. We don't need outside interference," the man chuckled. "Private? Ma'am, I've been diving this lake since '89. There are things down there that don't rust." "Things your grandfather knew about," he said, looking straight at me, "and that he helped put there." My blood ran cold. "I think you have me confused with someone else," I stammered. "Barrett Caldwell, grandson of Harold Northwick, former Army Corps hydraulic engineer, discharged 3 months ago," he stated, his authority absolute. "Your grandfather left you more than money, son. He left you a responsibility. This was Dakota Vance, my grandfather's partner, and he was clearly waiting for me." He pulled his boat onto the shore. "I'm Dakota Vance. I've been the unofficial caretaker of certain underwater assets in this lake since 1988. Assets," he explained, that the HOA had been unknowingly protecting by keeping people away from the deep water. Assets that were promises kept in waterproof containers. Before I could process this, the police cars arrived. Officer Ramirez looked utterly miserable, mediating a property dispute at 7:30 a.m. Veronica, now dripping but vindicated, pointed at me. "This man is trespassing." Ramirez, to his credit, asked to see documentation from both sides. When I presented my federal deed and military ID, and Dakota showed his old Army Corps' ID and the 1987 survey map he pulled from a waterproof case, showing the lake designated as part of the Federal Navigable Water System and a Federal Environmental Protection Study, the deputy's eyes glazed over. "Ma'am," he told Veronica, "these documents appear to show federal ownership of the lake itself, separate from the HOA's authority over the surrounding properties. This is beyond local law enforcement jurisdiction. You need to contact the Army Corps of Engineers district office." Veronica looked like her entire world had dissolved, her fuchsia suit ruined, her absolute authority crumbling. "We've been managing this lake for 40 years. We've collected fees." "What you've been managing," Dakota corrected quietly, folding his map, "is access to federally protected waters. What you've been collecting are illegal fees for use of public waterways." As the patrol cars pulled away, leaving me alone with Dakota and a growing suspicion, he handed me a waterproof paper with his number. Your grandfather knew someone would challenge them eventually. He left very specific instructions about what to do if the HOA ever tried to claim ownership. He left evidence, son. Evidence that's been sitting 47 feet underwater since 1988, waiting for someone with the right clearance to retrieve it. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Veronica Sinclair. We need to discuss this situation privately before you make any decisions you'll regret. There are aspects of the lake's history that you don't understand. Meet me at the community center tonight at 8 p.m. if you want to avoid federal complications." I met her, but she wasn't alone. Sitting beside her was a distinguished older gentleman in an expensive suit, his handshake firm, his smile the kind that never quite reaches the eyes. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Judge Adrian Hale, Veronica's husband and legal counsel for the Emerald Shores HOA. "Ah, so this was the puppet master Dakota had hinted at. The judicial protection, Judge Hale, with a practiced smoothness that came from decades of legal manipulation, opened a leather portfolio. My wife's initial approach this morning was overly direct, but the issue remains. Your claims are based on outdated documentation. We are prepared to offer $1.2 million for a clean transfer back to HOA management." The offer was fast, professional, and entirely too generous. I looked him in the eye. "I'm curious, Judge, why are you so eager to avoid federal review if the HOA's management has been legitimate?" His smile tightened, just imperceptibly. Federal environmental reviews have a way of expanding. What starts as a simple water rights question can evolve into comprehensive investigations of community governance, fee structures, development approvals. It's not about legitimacy. It's about efficiency and privacy. Veronica leaned in, her voice low. Digging into old federal environmental programs sometimes uncovers information that's better left undisturbed. The threat was clear. We know what's down there, and we will implicate you if you look. I asked him a final question. Judge, how long have you been providing legal counsel to the HOA? Since its incorporation in 1985, he replied with pride. I helped draft the original covenants establishing HOA authority over community resources, especially the lake. That was the final piece. Dakota's map showed the federal designation in 1987, 2 years after the judge helped establish the HOA's illegal claim. Driving back, I called Dakota. They offered me $1.2 million and threatened me with litigation and federal complications. Dakota's laugh was dark. Classic Hale strategy. You know him? Son, your grandfather and I weren't just diving partners. We were federal witnesses in an environmental crime investigation that never went to trial because certain evidence disappeared before it could be presented. The evidence, he confirmed, was exactly what was sitting 47 feet down. Audio recordings, financial documents, and photographic proof of a systematic environmental fraud dating back to 1985. An investigation shut down because the judge protecting the environmental criminals was the same judge who would be hearing the criminal cases. Dakota, we need to retrieve that evidence, I said. Been waiting 37 years for someone to say that, he replied. The next morning, at 5 a.m., the lake felt electric. We were ready, Dakota with his gear, me with my federal credentials, when the headlights appeared. Not just two, but a convoy of federal vehicles. The lead car stopped 50 yards away, and out stepped a woman in a dark suit with the purposeful stride of someone who takes control. Agent Sarah Mitchell, Environmental Crimes Division, Army Corps of Engineers. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Agent Mitchell. We need to discuss your property ownership and some related federal environmental concerns. Dakota stepped forward, pulling the waterproof witness protection authorization document my grandfather had signed in 1988 from his gear. Agent Mitchell, I'm a federal witness in an environmental crime investigation that was improperly terminated in 1990. I have documented evidence of systematic violations of the Clean Water Act, environmental fraud, and judicial corruption dating back to 1985. Mitchell's caution melted into active interest. We suited up, and as the sun rose, 2 federal divers accompanied Dakota. Watching those military-grade containers emerge from the dark, cold water felt like watching a resurrection. The preservation was pristine. Mitchell handled the first audio recording with the reverence due to evidence that could rewrite history. When she pressed play, Veronica Sinclair's voice, clear as a bell, filled the morning air. We'll tell the feds the lake is privately managed through HOA authority. They'll never check the original navigable waters designation. Adrian says his judicial position provides complete protection from environmental enforcement. The recording detailed 37 years of conspiracy. But the most damning clip was Judge Hale's voice, outlining his strategy. Federal environmental law is only effective if federal agents can gather prosecutable evidence. As long as I control the judicial process in this jurisdiction, federal investigators will never get close enough to build a case. My position provides absolute protection. Just as Mitchell's team finished documenting the evidence, a fleet of luxury cars arrived. Veronica's BMW, Judge Hale's Mercedes, and several vehicles carrying their legal counsel. They had come for reconnaissance. Veronica, back in an understated black ensemble but still wielding her silver clipboard, approached Agent Mitchell. I'm Veronica Sinclair. We need to discuss this unauthorized federal operation on community property. Agent Mitchell's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Sinclair, you need to understand that this is no longer community property. As of this morning, Lake Serenity has been designated a federal environmental protection zone under the authority of the Clean Water Act. All claims to private ownership or management authority are hereby terminated. Judge Hale stepped forward, his measured legal tone kicking in. Agent Mitchell, I need to inform you that any federal action regarding this property is subject to local judicial review under my jurisdiction. Mitchell didn't even flinch. Judge Hale, you need to understand that you're no longer in a position to exercise judicial authority over anything. Based on evidence recovered this morning, you are under federal investigation for environmental crime conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and abuse of judicial authority. The silence was deafening. Two agents approached with handcuffs. Judge Adrian Hale, Mitchell announced. You are under arrest for conspiracy to violate the Clean Water Act, obstruction of federal environmental law enforcement, abuse of judicial authority, and racketeering. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed across the water as 37 years of judicial corruption finally faced federal consequences. Veronica watched her husband being led away, her face a mask of disbelief, her empire collapsing in a single morning. Mitchell turned to her. Mrs. Sinclair, you're also under arrest for environmental fraud, conspiracy to violate federal water protection laws, and collection of illegal fees for access to public waterways. This is ridiculous. Veronica finally cried, but the fight had gone out of her. We were managing community resources. Ma'am, you were operating a criminal enterprise under the protection of judicial corruption, Mitchell stated flatly. 6 months later, the lake is glorious. Dakota is the official federal caretaker, the HOA is gone, the community is thriving under new transparent governance, and property values are up. Judge Hale got 18 years. Veronica got 12. The assets seized from their criminal enterprise funded the Harold Northwick Foundation for Environmental Protection, dedicated to ensuring waterways are never privatized illegally again. Every morning, at 6:47 a.m., Dakota and I meet on the dock, watching the sunrise over waters that finally belong to the people, not a criminal enterprise. We see environmental researchers, federal inspectors, and children swimming safely. The fuchsia suit that symbolized Veronica's authority. It now hangs in the Federal Environmental Crime Museum, a perfect, soggy testament to what happens when you mistake temporary power for permanent protection. So I'm curious, what about you? If you suddenly found yourself in this situation, offered $1.2 million to walk away versus the risk of exposing 37 years of corruption that could land you in legal trouble too, what would you have done? Would you have taken the money and the peace? Or would you have dived 47 feet to bring the truth to the surface? Drop a comment below because I think the question of what we owe to our community versus what we owe to our own peace is a battle we all fight. And I want to know where you stand. And if this story hit home, hit that like button and subscribe. We have plenty more stories about justice surfacing when you least expect it.